And we're waiting on Jen.
That's correct. It looks like we only have 2 people on the call right now.
Hi, Stephanie. Audrey Bonner from GPA Consulting is here.
Oh, okay. Hi, Audrey. So, Audrey, I just want to give you a heads up because you're the only staff member or consultant staff that's calling in. So, we're going to be going through the first 2 items first. So, yeah,
Okay.
just heads up, you're going to be the very last item. Is your number...
Sounds great. Thanks for the heads up.
Sure, no problem. And Audrey, is your number the area code with 267?
Correct.
Okay.
Hello.
Commissioner Wu, can you hear us okay?
Hello, Stephanie.
Hello, Jen. Don Brown. I can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. And I can also hear you, Jen, this part.
And Ryan, a quick question before you take off. Is the audio from the call picked up for the YouTube stream okay? Oh, okay. 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 Well, it looks like we have all the commissioners on the line, so let me know when you're ready to begin, and I'll wait to IT to go ahead and start the recording.
I think we're ready. I'm ready. This is Commissioner Wu, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, let's call the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee in session for Wednesday, May 13th. We have 3 planning commissioners here this evening. We have Jen Wu, we have Don Brown, and myself, Bart Crandall. For those listening in to this station, the purpose of the subcommittee is to provide direction, insight, concerns, and options to the applicant on how the project can best comply with the city's design guidelines and/or city policies. The subcommittee is not an approving body. They make recommendations to the Planning Commission and Zoning Administrator with compliance with the city design guidelines. Each of the subcommittee members will provide input and suggest recommendations to the applicant based on written city design guidelines and/or policies. The subcommittee will not design the project for the applicant, nor will the members always agree on the best course of action. The applicant can then assess the input, incorporate any changes accordingly, with the understanding that the subcommittee is simply a recommending body. Decisions to approve, deny, or modify a project are made by the Planning Commission, City Council, or the Zoning Administrator with input and recommendations from the subcommittee and staff. We have some minutes to approve this evening, and in attendance at that meeting were Commissioner Wu and Commissioner Crandall. Commissioner Wu, do you have any comments on the minutes from the meeting of April 15th? You there, Commissioner Wu?
I don't know.
I don't. No revisions. I also have no revisions. Do I have a motion? I will make a motion that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee's April 15th, 2020 meeting. Do we have a second?
Second. And Brown abstains.
I think we have lost Commissioner Wu.
Hello? I heard him, I heard him make a second. This is Commissioner Brown, and I, of course, abstain.
Yes. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Wu, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Passes 2,
I heard him say aye.
0, and 1 abstention. Our first item of business is a discretionary sign permit, 19240, 76 Master Sign Program, 2360 South El Camino Real, and our staff presenter this afternoon is Aaron Gray.
Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. This is
Aaron Guy.
This is Aaron Guy, Community Development Technician here on staff with the city. The project at hand today is Discretionary Sign Permit 19-240, also known as the 76 Master Sign Program. The location is at 2360 South El Camino Real. It's within the neighborhood commercial 1.3 zone, and it's catty-cornered from the existing OC Tavern at the I-5 off-ramp at South El Camino Real. The proposal includes replacing the existing monument sign with white stucco columns and a white stucco base with orange decorative tiles, almost identical to the approved monument sign at the 76 gas station location at 606 Camino de los Mares. The proposal also includes a new convenience store wall sign. It includes refacing the existing gas pump signage and existing flag number signs. And it also includes to recolor the existing bollards with a branded 76 orange color. Staff had 2 main recommendations for the project. The first recommendation was to utilize the same gunmetal gray paint color proposed for the columns on the bollards as opposed to 76 orange. Staff believes this would cut down on some aesthetic clutter at the site. The applicant has chosen to keep the proposed 76 orange color for the bollards, and they do have the allowable sign area to accommodate those colored bollards as signage. The second staff recommendation was to remove and replace the existing snack shop wall sign with a sign that is more compatible with the design standards of a gateway location. The applicant is agreeable to that staff recommendation to remove and replace the existing snack shop sign and has put forth new plans that propose using pin-mounted individual aluminum channel letters in matte black, again similar to the existing signage at the 76 on Camino de los Mares. Staff seeks DRSC concurrence with recommendations as well as other recommendations for the project. This concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Aaron. Do we have any questions for Aaron? We'll start with Commissioner Wu.
Yes, Commissioner Wu. Aaron, I like everything you say. And the only question I have is you recommend the wall sign to be non-illuminated. My question is, I assume that the applicant had the option to illuminate it with an exterior light, with a halo light, or without any light. Can you tell us why you want no illumination here?
Sure, that's correct. They do have the option for external illumination. They do also have an option for internal illumination. Staff's recommendation was based primarily on the existing 76 gas station signage that was approved at Camino de los Mares. Since the branding is similar and that signage is consistent with the 76 brand, staff thought it best that the design of their signs be consistent across locations across the city.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Brown, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so the sign is going to be a pin-mounted sign. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, the applicant's, did he say he wants to continue the bollards being orange, vice gray, like you suggested? Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct. The applicant has expressed that they would prefer to keep the 76 orange branded colored bollards. as opposed to changing them to gray like staff has recommended. And they do have the allowable sign area to accommodate that orange color.
Right, okay. Thank you very much. That's the only questions I had.
Okay, Aaron, this is Bart Crandall. Did building and safety have any comment when reviewed on the color of the bollards for safety reasons? Normally they'd be required to be the safety yellow, so the orange is probably appropriate.
Yeah, so building did not have any comments, and the existing bollards are actually red, so orange is not a far stretch from the existing color.
Very good. Correct. Okay.
Since we are unable to take public comment on this, we will go straight to discussion. Do you have comments for discussion, Commissioner Wu?
Not a lot. I like the repaint of the eve fascia to tan color, and I think the bollard to the orange is okay because it reminds people of the potential hazard. If the applicant wants to illuminate the sign with a halo lighting or exterior lighting, I wouldn't oppose it. And that's all. That's all. I like the whole package.
Very good. Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, I concur with Commissioner Wu. Orange is okay for the boulders because they're currently red, so they're more visible. So I'm fine with orange. And I would also support if the applicant wanted to, would light the sign with pin-mounted halo lighting if they're so to choose. Other than that, I like the whole package. Good job, Aaron, on putting this together with the applicant. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. This is Bart Crandall again. Either Stephanie or Aaron, since this is a master sign program, which all signs replaced or anything in the future will be based on, can the master sign program indicate that they have the option to go lighted, or don't we need to state that on the wall sign?
I think that's a great point, Commissioner, and certainly something that I will pass on to the applicant, along with the information provided that if they would like to seek lighting at this time, they're welcome to do so in an appropriate way. But I think the addition of a note on that page of the application would certainly be appropriate, so that future planners know that appropriate halo lit lighting or shielded illuminated lighting would be okay.
Thank you very much. I am. With that comment, I am in support of the project, and very good job, Aaron, and thank you for pushing to get the fascia color changed to something other than orange. That's great. So do we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve discretionary sign permit 19-240, 76 master sign program, 2360 South El Community Hall.
Okay, motion by Brown. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wu. All in favor? Aye.
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 Do we have any opposed? No, so it passes 3-0. Congratulations to the applicant, and good job, Aaron.
Thank you, Commissioners.
The next item is agenda item 2B. Cultural Heritage Permit 20017, Giobi Residence, 318 West Avenida Gaviota, and Kyle Weber is our presenter this evening.
Chair Crandall, this is Stephanie. I just wanted to, before we jump into this presentation, mention that we are getting a little audio feedback here. So I just wanted to remind all of the DRSC members to remember to mute their microphone when they're not speaking. And that'll just help to ensure we have a good, clean recording for the YouTube stream as well as the cable broadcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay, Kyle Weber here, going to present Cultural Heritage Permit 20-017, also known as the Giobi Residence. I'm going to walk through attachment 5 of the presentation, starting on page 2 or slide 2 of attachment 5. So 318 West Avenida Gaviota is the project site. It sits in a residential low zoning district and abuts the Toledo Coastal Canyon. It is not in the Coastal Canyon Exclusion Order Zone, and so it requires Coastal Commission approval for a CDP or Coastal Development Permit. And it is also not in any other overlay zones, including the architectural overlay, but the property is adjacent to two historical buildings, and it is proposing an addition greater than 500 square feet, hence why they're applying for a cultural heritage permit. The project is proposing a 432 square foot addition to the first floor near the front of the building and a 414 square foot addition to the second floor. The project also proposes two second-story balconies in the rear overlooking the canyon and pool and spa and deck area. Going on to slide 3 of the presentation, the DPR form for 320 Avenida, West Avenida Gaviota is the historical building directly adjacent to the project site. 320 West Avenida Gaviota was constructed in 1928 as a single-story building. They were approved for a cultural heritage permit in 2006, permitting a 2,588 square foot second-story addition. In the slide on the right, you'll see the single-story, and the picture on the left is the current building at 320 West Avenida Gaviota with the second-story addition. Moving on to slide 4. Across the street from 318 West Avenida Gaviota is 319 West Avenida Gaviota. This is also a historic building. The DPR form is attachment 3 or page 13 in the staff report. This is a 2-story single-family residence constructed in 1975. Moving on to slide 5 of attachment 5. So along with the added square footage and the extensive deck area at the rear of the property, the project is proposing to remove the existing pitched roof and include a flat roof on the attached garage and primary building. The exterior design and aesthetic that they're proposing is a combination of modern stone architecture with accents of smooth white stucco. The two pictures here you see on the left, the existing, and on the right is the proposed. Moving on to slide 6, we're showing a south elevation of the existing and proposed project. The south elevation is the elevation that is facing the historic property at 320 West Avenida Gaviota. So the project is proposing stainless steel railings with cable infill, which are used on the balconies and deck in the rear. The detailed description of windows are not necessarily provided. On the right, where the proposed image is, you'll see variety and depth included in the new structure, which is facing the historic property, and the variety and depth that exists there is extended all the way up into the garage where it kind of flattens out. So overall, the second-story addition that is proposed is consistent in mass and scale with the recent addition that was added to the historic property at 320 West Avenida Gaviota and other second-story single-family buildings in the neighborhood. The proposed building will maintain its current height. It will not exceed development standards. The general shape, form, and size of the proposed street-facing additions are consistent with surrounding buildings and have no adverse effects to the adjacent historic structure and only slightly impacts the non-historic second story added in 2006. However, the city's landscape standards requires 50% of the front setback area as permeable soil. In the existing project site, permeable soil is less than 50% of the front yard setback area, but they are proposing to increase it from 15% to 32%. And so staff is recommending to add a tree in the front yard to improve the site's compliance with city landscape standards and to soften views from Avenida Gaviota. We're also recommending for the applicant to the greatest extent possible to remove and replace sections of the cement or porcelain tile pavers and driveway to achieve 50% permeable landscape in the front yard setback. And we're also recommending to incorporate additional materials and articulation details to break up the large expanse of the garage wall along the south elevation facing the historic property. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much, Kyle. We'll ask you some questions. I've got a couple of questions for you. I was unable to discern from the package the existing height of the garage fascia versus the new height of the garage parapet. Do you know what the two heights are?
So I don't know what the two heights are off the top of my head. But I do know that the proposed garage, let's see right here. Even though the garage is attached, and so it's not subject to any height limitations for a detached accessory structure, it is an attached accessory structure, and it could technically go to the height of the zone, but they're not proposing it any higher than what was proposed before, including the pitched roof. Let's see here.
Okay, but they moved the height. Well, the reason I'm asking is coming west, which is actually probably south down the road, you get a glimpse of the historic house from a ways up the street, mainly because it's the low fascia over the garage doors. If that's raised up to the height of the ridge on the garage, it will be, the historic house won't be visible until you're at the property or just passing this structure. And I want to make sure that that isn't the case. I think, is it Ian Buchan, the architect on this?
Yes, that's correct. And so I have the plans in front of me. So
Okay,
the garage is proposed at 11 feet, 6 inches. And they are proposing additional square footage in the front second story, but that sits behind the attached garage. And so any additions added to the second
Yes,
story.
and I'm going to assume it's an 8-foot plate currently. So they've added 3 feet to the height of the front of the garage, which is blocking view of the historic, and we'll get into the discussion on that. But thank you for the confirmation on that. The other one is, where do you propose the tree be, since currently the entire front of the property is pretty much paved, and there's a palm tree between, at the street, between the project and the historic house.
So there is a tree that is between the property and the non-historic house that they plan to remove, but they do have space which they have shown to put around 15-gallon trees on each side of the driveway area in the front yard setback. So they do have room to add not just one tree, but 2 that they've shown. And so they definitely can add one on the north side of the driveway, and they would be able to add one on the south side as well. And the landscape architect has shown that.
Okay, very good.
That's possible. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they are going to remove the paving as requested by you on those side yards.
Yes, they have agreed that they would be able to do that and to reach the 50% landscape as much as possible to the greatest extent.
Very good. Okay, Commissioner Wu, do you have any questions?
I have a few, this is Commissioner Wu. Kyle, I have a few questions. On the chart, I assume it's a typo. The proposed parking is listed as 2 spaces, while it's keeping the 3-car garage. So it's a 3 spaces, right?
That's correct. It should be 3 spaces proposed.
Do you have any engineering drawing of the site?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you receive any engineering drawing of the site?
So
I believe there's a grading plan included.
Yeah, there is a grading plan that will be required. Engineering has a comment saying that would be required before any kind of building permits are processed.
But you haven't received the grading plan, not yet.
That's correct. They have not submitted any grading plans at this point.
If we were
There's
to
a
approve
topographic
them,
survey, and I don't believe they're changing elevations on the pad itself, other than back at the pool.
That's what it's,
if we were to support a design with less than 50% landscaping in the front yard area, does the applicant need a variance?
we would not require a variance for this. We usually would not require to comply with the 50% landscape requirement just to apply for discretionary permit. It is something that we would have as a condition in some circumstances, but in some circumstances, it's not possible to achieve the 50% landscape.
And this is Stephanie. I just wanted to chime in that typically we do request DRSC direction with regard to compliance with the 50% landscape coverage. So there is a provision within the zoning ordinance that says that for sites that are not conforming with regard to landscape coverage, they're not mandated to comply when they are proposing a project, but we can certainly ask them to come as close as possible to 50% or ask for full compliance. Typically, that's really up to the decision-making body and decided upon through the discretionary process. So we are looking for feedback from the Design Review Subcommittee today in that regard.
Okay. Because we don't have a detailed engineering drawing, the landscape plan shows that the driveway cut has been widened comparing to existing condition. The site plan shows that the existing curb cut stays the same. They're inconsistent. Which one is proposed?
Any answers?
Unfortunately, this is definitely a reason why we wish we had the applicant available to pose that question to them. So if you have a specific concern, if there are any inconsistencies, we're happy to discuss that with the applicant after this meeting. It could perhaps just be a matter of the architect and the landscape architect not being on the same page, and there might be minor inconsistencies between those plans.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but in general,
That's what
they should not be expanding the size of the curb cut. That's not something that staff would be in support of.
Okay, Commissioner Brown, do you have any questions?
Yeah, side question. Is this going to be required a coastal commission approval, coastal development permit because it's on a canyon?
Yes, that's correct.
The applicant has met all, and you looked at, because I don't have a full set of plans here, just the booking, so that all the back area meets the string line requirements per our land use plan, approved coastal land use plan, that would satisfy the coastal requirements in the back of the property?
Yeah, so the applicant had submitted a couple different revisions of their project in order to comply with the LUP. And so there was a couple meetings with myself and the city planner, and we determined, we actually did a site visit, and after that we determined that there is a separate provision in the LUP that looks at setbacks for pools and accessory structures. So after some pretty comprehensive analysis, we determined that it does comply with the string line and the coastal canyon setbacks in general.
Okay, good. I just rotate on and off the Design Review Subcommittee, and I'm not used to dealing with a booklet of a plan instead of a full set of plans, so it's very difficult And so some of the lines I see drawn here, I thought maybe there was a string line issue or incompatibility with the back of the property and the canyon. And I don't know if there's any, was there development in that down the slope of the canyon that may require remediation? And any deeding of property back to the state for where the property line runs to the bottom of the canyon? Is that also, it's beyond the purview of the design review subcommittee, I guess it's just a question for information.
Yeah, so they do have a topography map, and they have a previous soils analysis that shows the canyon edge. And they show that they're currently in compliance with where the canyon edge is and where their current deck is located, which is at grade. And so they are showing where the canyon edge is, and they are showing the certain setbacks for either 30% of the lot width or lot depth, or 15 feet from the canyon edge for the deck area, and then also the string line for any deck area that is above 30 inches.
Okay, so you're comfortable going forward that, and do they own the property down at the bottom of the canyon, or so the Coastal Commission will require them to deed it back to the state?
So the property does extend down the canyon, yes.
So that will require a deed back to the state then as they go through the process with the Coastal Commission. I guess that's, and the applicant's aware of that. I'm kind of fine with the design, I guess. I agree with some of the landscape issues, and I would propose to the design review subcommittee that we just make this thing approved subject to the approval by our city landscape consultant. And if Pat is happy with what the applicant comes up with, then that should be good enough to make sure that they hit the 50% rule if possible. I'd just throw that over to the design review subcommittee, and that's it.
Very good. Okay, this is Bart Crandall again. We are just here to review the cultural heritage permit portions of this project, but I totally agree with Don. Normally, when we've got coastal canyons and all, we've seen it at planning commission level and are able to validate the encroachment into the coastal canyon. But that's not what we're here to review today. Now, this does not go to planning commission. This just goes to ZA. Is that correct?
This will go to planning commission.
It's cultural heritage permit, Bart, so it comes to the planning commission.
Very good. Okay, so we'll have an opportunity at that level to review the impact on the canyon. So with that, we have no public comment. Stephanie, did we receive anything from the Historic Society or Larry Culbertson? Any comments?
No, we did not receive any public comments from the Historical Society or other members of the public with regard to this item.
Okay, very good.
No, he vented long and loud with the property next door when they approved the expansion on the back of the actual site itself. Oh yeah, that was big time.
Yeah. Okay, so we will open it for discussion. Commissioner Wu, would you like to start?
Yes, this is Commissioner Wu. My comment for this meeting is mainly on the site. I'm okay with the architectural style. If we're not asking them to be any particular style, I think the compatibility isn't much of an issue. Most of my comments is about the site plan and the landscaping. I think the reading the project does not meet the 50% landscaping in front yard setback area goes back to the applicant's decision to keep that a 3-car garage, and they don't have to. They can have a 2-car garage, or they can have an L-shaped tandem, 2-car tandem in tandem, and a 1 car on the side. So that caused the front yard setback to be 50%, much less than 50%. For a project that's designed in such an extent, it's almost a complete reconstruction. I usually would like to see 50% landscaping, unless it's difficult to do it. The existing curb cut is narrower. So, and there's a parkway on the street that's filled with tiles. So I agree with the staff recommendation to expand the landscaping in the front yard setback area as much as possible. That would include, for example, keep the curb cut as is. Take out the hardscaping in the parkway area and put some drought tolerant landscaping there. That's inside public right of way, by the way. Then also there's a walkway leading to the front door, not directly, it's kind of a zigzag. And that portion can be taken out and be planted so the applicant can just use the driveway before they make a right turn and a left turn again to reach the front entry. Then in between the single car garage and the 2-car garage door, we can have the applicant to add a strip of landscaping to separate these two driveway. As far as trees, if it's 25 feet per street frontage, then the street frontage is 45 feet, and we see enough spaces to plant 2 trees, I'd ask for 2 trees. The rendering looks nice, but it's from the back side. I'm more interested in the front side, the street view. So I'd like the applicant to produce a perspective from the street, especially from street looking down toward the historical building, toward the orientation of the ocean. And the sidewalk, I need to see a site plan with some engineering there to make sure the sidewalk meets the ADA requirements. Since we have a parkway, so the driveway cut may be limited within the parkway and not affecting the sidewalk, but I'm not sure. I need to see the drawing. If the driveway encroaches into the sidewalk, then the sidewalk needs to go up around the driveway approach to make sure the accessibility of the sidewalk, according to the civil engineer, according to our standard. Commissioner Brown brought up the coastal county setback. We don't have enough information to evaluate it at this moment. Just to emphasize the landscaping, we need a landscaping in the front yard to soften architecture, to enhance the street scene, and provide shade to pedestrians. And that's the gist of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown.
Yes, good afternoon. I kind of agree with the staff's comments as far as trying to make the landscaping work within this existing 3-car garage. Try to get as much of the, this landscaping percentage up as possible through what you've recommended. Has the applicant come in on your other suggestion as far as articulation on the south-facing garage that faces the historic asset to the left of it? Have they come in with any proposals or changes at all to staff?
They have not submitted anything yet, but they were open to that idea and they found it a reasonable recommendation.
So they're willing to, provide some articulation on that side wall of the garage. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, those are my only comments that I had, Mr. Crandall.
Oh, yes, this is Commissioner Crandall. If we look at page 3 of the actual staff report, not the presentation, it's an aerial view of that corner. I'm going to say that there isn't a house on that outside side of the street, since they're all pie-shaped lots, that has 50% landscaping. I'm a little concerned with putting a tree at the, I guess it would be the north side of the property, unless it's a palm or something, because it will then block, again, the view of the historic house as you come down the road. So we need to be careful about whatever species it's going to be. And as far as the 3-car garage, I think there's more benefit to the neighborhood to have a 3-car garage than having a few additional square feet of landscaping in the front yard on this particular section of the road. I think staff's comments are all valid and I support them. I am concerned, though, about the height of the flat garage roof blocking the view of the historic house's garage and all. Basically, you'll be driving down the street, all you'll see is the second story, where now you can see the nice barrel tile roof as you come down, which will then be blocked. The barrel tile roof on the historic structure will be blocked until you're right in front of it. So I think I'd like to see staff talk that over with the applicant. Unfortunately, we can't go one-on-one with the applicant like we usually do. So that would be a recommendation for further work that I'd like staff to do with the applicant and their designer. But overall, as far as the cultural heritage permit, that's the only thing I see that is negative to the historic structure. The wall variation adjacent to it, great. It's not a section of the building that has a whole lot of windows, so it doesn't come across to me as being super necessary, but I definitely agree with it. So I could support the project, but suggest staff do additional work. Any additional comments from either Brown or Wu?
Chair Crandall, this is Stephanie. Just for a point of clarification for the meeting notes, when you were referring to the flat part of the roof that you would like staff to work with the applicant on redesigning, which portion of the elevations were you referring to?
Yeah, what I'm looking at is right now they're going to take what I believe is an 8-foot high wall, make it 11, so they're adding 3 feet to the height of it, which will put it above the adjacent garage, and it actually butts out in front of it as you drive down the street. I'd like to see if they could lower it, or on the, let me get to the elevation here. On the left side where they have the 2 windows, maybe that side can, over the 1-car garage door, could be lower and allow view of the historic structure, but then the balance of the, over the 2-car garage could be higher. So the roof over the garage might have 2 heights, and I'd like that at least explored.
Hey, Chair, this is Commissioner Wu. I believe if you look at sheet A4, section A, those small windows are on the second level, but it's behind the top. It doesn't look like
They're pulled back. Right, the height of the garage door is, I believe, what looks almost like the stucco screed line on the front elevation.
Right.
And you can see where it's only 6 inches below the windows.
So that's something I'm not sure, because on section A, it shows that the garage portion has been raised to 11 something. Yeah, raised the substantial.
If you can, Jean, go to page 4 of the agenda item, not the presentation, and it's got a front elevation and a side elevation.
Yes.
And you can see that the height of the garage is only, I'm going to say, 3 feet below the upper level.
Yes.
And that's what I'm concerned with. Right now, it's a pitched roof, and maybe the ridge is at that level, but it pitches down to 8 foot at the front of the garage.
All right, we're not sure. Looks like the garage door, if the garage door stays at 7 feet tall or 6 inches, or it could be 8 feet tall garage door. We don't know.
Exactly. That's why we don't have enough information. That's why I see that needs to be explored.
That's right.
Okay. Any other discussions?
Set of plans, you could determine this. No, I had no other comments other than I wish I had a full set of plans so I could really determine with accuracy what's going on here. But I guess this is the way you've been accepting proposal design reviews lately.
And no plate heights were actually given on the drawings that allow us to determine this without having something we can scale. Question for Stephanie, procedural-wise. Their next step is get a package ready for Coastal Commission, correct?
Planning Commission.
So the next step would be making revisions per the development management team's comments, as well as the design review subcommittee, resubmitting that to the city. I believe there are still outstanding DMT comments. Is that correct, Kyle?
For engineering.
For engineering, yes. And so once those revised plans come back in, it'll be recirculated to our DMT. And then once we receive the buy-off from all of the different departments and divisions, then we would be looking to schedule that for a public hearing before the Planning Commission. And then if it receives Planning Commission approval, then the applicant would then need to move forward to obtaining Coastal Commission approval.
Okay, I don't want to delay the project, but I certainly want to be able to review this one more time with the proper plate heights and all shown, and having Ian review what can be done to avoid blocking the view of the historic structure from up the street at least a little ways. So whether it comes back to design review or we review that small bit during Planning Commission, I would ask both Don and Jen if they'd rather see it come back here or just do it at Planning Commission level.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Zhang Wu. I'd like to see the three-car garage to be revised to articulate the front elevation a little. The front elevation is dominated by this three-car garage on a single plane, and the front door is set back. Granted that the canopy expanding beyond the garage, but I see some benefits of articulating this front elevation. Also, the front yard portion of the site needs to see more landscaping revisions. So I'm good either way. I can support it come down. I can support it go to planning commission.
I generally prefer to have this stuff ironed out at design review so that the planning commission can look at the bigger levels of the project, you know, all the coastal commission requirements and the other zoning areas, and have the design features all worked out. It's my always.
Let's see it again on the design review.
Okay, let's see, let's do a motion. I'll make a motion that we, with the comments, we have staff review it and have it brought back. Ian is very good at responding to our requests, and I think, Kyle, if you have any questions, you can certainly contact us in your negotiations with the designer.
Okay.
And let's have it come back at the first opportunity, because I'm sure he can turn it around very quickly. This isn't a big revision, but I think Jen had a very good request to view, because we're looking at a cultural heritage permit here, and the one thing that does affect the adjacent cultural resource is a view of it coming down, coming towards the ocean. So you would request maybe a rendering or an illustration showing what that looks like and how much of the historic we can see. And I think that's a good, valid request also. So I would move that we have it come back to Design Review Subcommittee at its first opportunity. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
We have a second by Brown, motion by Crandall. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so let's have it come back, but good job. I think what we got is real close.
And this is Stephanie.
Thank
I
you
was
very
gonna add just one comment. So since there was an overall desire to concur with staff's recommendation number 2 to increase the landscape coverage, if you have specific recommendations on areas within the site plan where we should discuss with the applicant opportunities to add additional landscaping, I would suggest marking up the plans and scanning it and giving it back to staff, so that would just help us with our discussions. I know normally if we had an in-person DRSC meeting, a lot of times the commissioners are really great about marking up plans and allowing the applicant to see firsthand which areas, you know, should be looked at. So since we don't have that benefit, you know, perhaps that's something you can do on your end, and we're happy to have that discussions on your behalf.
Okay, and will this be reviewed by the city's landscape architect prior to us coming back to us? Or could it be?
It could be, but so it will be required that it is reviewed by our consultant, but it doesn't necessarily go before it comes to DRSC, but that there is an opportunity to do that.
I'll tell you this, it would pay you dividends, because I know some of the other planning commissioners are really going to dig into the landscape plan.
Yeah.
One planning commissioner in particular will dig into it quite extensively.
I think if I can just chime in for a second.
Dr. Blackwell is very particular about landscaping. So do you have good enough direction, Stephanie?
I'm just looking over at Kyle to see if he has everything he needs in order to work with the applicant on these revisions.
Yeah, so I will say for the landscape review that they are required because of the pool and the number of landscaping to comply with water efficient landscape ordinance. And right now, because of what they're proposing, they're guessing that'll be a little bit of a financial burden because of the cost. And so they were hoping to, once they finalize their conceptual plans, and then to go ahead and begin the landscape review. But so I would like to clarify if you're requesting that gets approved from our landscape architect before the next DRSC meeting, or if you're requesting that it gets reviewed before the planning commission meeting.
Any comment from Brown or Wu on that? I'm of the opinion.
My intention, this is Commissioner Brown, and my intention would be to have Pat Murphy probably review it before you go to the Planning Commission. Because there's a couple of planning commissioners that are not on design review that are definitely going to dig into the landscape plan. One in
I
particular.
would agree that gives actually the applicant cover for his presentation.
This is Commissioner Wu. My thought is have the landscape consultant to look at it, but he doesn't have to approve it. The applicant needs to make a good faith effort to increase landscaping in front yard portion as much as possible. And having a three-car garage is not a reason for that deviation.
Well, I would, this is Commissioner Crandall again. I think you said it very succinctly that they need to make a good faith effort to do the landscaping, but I would not, I don't know if the ordinance allows it, but since it is an existing three-car garage, it's staying in the same location. To get landscaping, I would not suggest losing a garage. That is, comes at a high premium, and we need all the parking we can get on those corners. We don't want anybody parking in the street.
Oh, I agree. I'm not asking them to get rid of the garage, but no, the front yard is almost all hardscape paving now. That has to be reduced as much as practical.
Okay, very good, very good. Any last comment, Don?
No, that should be enough.
Okay, so I think we're in agreement that it should be revised for the comments and brought back here. I don't think they're onerous recommendations, and we are here to work with the applicant to get their project in a position to get approval at the Planning Commission level. So I would make that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Thank you very much. Good job, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Our next item of business is new business, and it's a draft North Beach Historic nomination document. And Jonathan Lightfoot is making the presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Jonathan. This will be a bit of a unique item. I believe we do have Audrey on the line from GPA as well, so I'm just going to do a very quick introduction and then hand that over to her. And she's going to go through the third attachment, which is a PowerPoint that she put together with GPA. So again, I think most of you are familiar with this, but the city applied for a certified local government grant last year around this time. And we did get that grant from the state. So that grant was put towards a project that has been long considered by the city's city council as well as the Historic Society. And it's to evaluate North Beach as a potential historic district. Again, that was something that was recommended within the last survey that the city conducted back in 2006, identifying the cluster of resources in North Beach is potentially eligible for National Register recognition. So the city is pursuing that recognition. I did indicate within the report, why are we having DRC review this? It's not something that we'll be taking action on either at Planning Commission or council level. Any citizen could have applied for this nomination or submitted this nomination form. So it's not something that we need to take local action on, but given that we have this contract with GPA to assist us in the nomination, we did want to provide the opportunity both for design review, which serves as our cultural heritage subcommittee, and for any members of the public who have shown interest to comment on this project as it moves forward. So I hope that the information within this report was something that you were able to look through and see the work that GPA has already done. But moving forward, I'm just going to turn over the presentation to Audrey. I'll remain on the line, of course, as well. And if there's any questions specific for staff, I'd be happy to respond to those.
Jonathan, before you go, this is Bart Crandall. Can you tell me, is a lot of the occupancies within the proposed historic district have their parking based on the parking study? Does this boundary capture all the parking that their occupancies will be based on?
No, it does not. So
is any of the parking considered down in the lower lot?
Okay. So the city conducts a biannual parking study. We'll be doing another round of that parking study this summer. The boundary that is shown encapsulates a good portion of that parking, but no, it does not capture all of the parking. The parking study that we do also includes on-street parking on El Camino Real, and it did evaluate evaluated that lower area as well. And a portion of the parking stalls are intended for primary use by Metrolink for the train station. All that is information that's included within the parking study, but the direct answer to your question is no, the boundary doesn't include all of the parking for the beach.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'll turn it over to Audrey. Audrey, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Audrey, if you wouldn't mind taking it away, and if you want to start with your presentation, but of course, feel free to jump into pieces of the report if you want to get into any specifics.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jonathan. Can everybody hear me okay before I take it away?
We can hear you better than everybody else.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I'm glad. Okay, so if you would like to follow along, I'm going to jump to, I believe the presentation starts on page 53 of the attachment for item 3A, and that will be slide number 1. So first of all, thank you to commissioners and committee members for having me here today. As Jonathan has already kindly informed you, my name is Audrey Von Ahrens, and I am an architectural historian at GPA Consulting. We are an environmental consulting firm that specializes in historic preservation, and we were brought in by the city to nominate the North Beach Historic District to the National Register. So moving on to page 2 of the presentation, 54 of the packet. The proposed North Beach Historic District encompasses buildings at the historic northern entrance to San Clemente from El Camino Real. City founder Ole Hansen envisioned the North Beach as the recreational and entertainment center of the city, beginning with the construction of the Ole Hansen Beach Club in 1927 to 1928, as well as plans for proposed parks and gardens, lagoons, and a dance pavilion. But instead of exactly following those plans, later development brought on a restaurant, originally the Aquarium Cafe, a dance casino, movie theater, and eventually a bowling alley that were constructed in the vicinity of the beach club. And there's a historic aerial from 1938 depicted on this slide, which shows all of those first buildings except for the bowling alley, which does not show up until the next historic aerial that we were able to find, which is not until 1960. But just to give you a comparison of the development that took place over that period of time, by the 1960s, the district, through the 1950s, the district really developed exclusively as a commercial area, and today it reflects that and contains many of San Clemente's iconic historic buildings. And included in the slide is a list of some other buildings and businesses that occupied that North Beach area, some of which have since been demolished. So just to give you a little background about how we got here today, in several previous studies and surveys identified the district as eligible for listing in the National Register and under the local register, the local historic preservation ordinance, I apologize. North Beach was first identified as a potential National Registered District in 2006 as part of the Citywide Historic Resources Survey. And then in 2009, North Beach was evaluated as appearing eligible for a local designation under San Clemente criteria A, D, and E. And then following the 2009 and 2010 study, a consultant recommended the preparation of a National Register nomination, which leads us to why we are here today. So in order to complete the National Register nomination, GPA used all of its prior documentation, existing context statements, and survey data, and conducted additional research as well to fill out the form for the nomination. We also took photographs to prepare the National Register nomination and completing a walking tour of the district in March, which I believe many of you had the pleasure of joining, or we had the pleasure of joining you with that day. And the nomination basically breaks down into a couple of different portions. It includes a narrative description and a statement of significance, as well as photographs, both present day and historic, and location maps. And the draft nomination was distributed prior to this meeting and is included in the earlier pages of this attachment. Which leads us into the next slide, page 6 of the slides, or 58 of the packet. So for a bit of history on the district and why it is significant, the nomination addresses significance of the North Beach Historic District under National Register Criterion A. The North Beach Historic District is eligible at the local level of significance in the area of community planning and development as entertainment and recreation. So founded in 1925, San Clemente was one of the first new master plan towns in California, and located at the northern entrance to San Clemente on El Camino Real. The properties comprising the historic district were referred to as the Amusement Center by 1947. Thus, taken together, they reflect the city founder Ole Hansen's intent to develop a beachside community that promoted social welfare with unique public amenities such as generously sized open spaces and a variety of recreational facilities, all aesthetically modeled on a romanticized version of California history. And as we all know, in order to create the atmosphere he envisioned, the architecture of San Clemente was restricted to Spanish colonial revival style. We also needed to establish a period of significance for the nomination. The significance that was established for the historic district extends from the year Ole Hansen published his original plan for the community in 1927. The map is depicted on the slide there, which shows his original plan for North Beach specifically, and extends until the end date for the last major building completed in North Beach in 1946, which is the bowling alley. That leads us to the next slide, labeled boundary, page 7. The boundary for the North Beach Historic District is, as you can see, generally a triangular area. It's bound by North El Camino Real at the north, Avenida Estacion, and Boca de la Playa. The district is visually distinct. It's visually distinct for its low-density commercial, entertainment, and recreational development, and also is distinctive next to the coastline to the west and cliffside of residential development to the southeast. And it generally corresponds to the area that was originally planned by Hansen in 1927 as the north entrance to San Clemente. And as you can see from the labeled map, the boundary does comprise both contributing and non-contributing buildings. There are 5 contributing buildings, which are the Ole Hansen Beach Club, the original Aquarium Cafe, Casino San Clemente, the Miramar Theater, and the San Clemente Bowling Alley. They're all numbered 1 through 5 and depicted in yellow or a dotted hashing. The non-contributing buildings consist of commercial buildings mostly along North El Camino Real, as well as a pump station at the south corner of Avenida Estacion. And they are depicted in a pink border or a diagonal line hashing. That leads us to the last slide, just to answer some frequently asked questions regarding National Register listing and what that means. In addition to honorific recognition, which is one of the most important parts of listing, listing in the National Register also has certain effects for historic properties, which are all listed on the slide. At the federal level, properties have specific consideration in planning for federally licensed and federally assisted projects. There is an eligibility for certain tax provisions, so owners of properties listed in the National Register could be eligible for a 20% investment tax credit for certified rehabilitation, and that goes towards the rehab project. And then they would have to produce certified historic structures and qualify for federal grants for historic preservation, but these are only when funds are available. And then at the state and local level, under state and city of San Clemente ordinances, listing on the North Beach Historic District, listing the historic district on the National Register, would introduce no changes. The historic district would not function as a regulatory mechanism. The city's existing historic preservation ordinance already regulates contributing and non-contributing properties within the local district boundaries and requires design review for any future development and review of any impacts under CEQA in this specific area. So I hope that kind of answers some questions about what listing means and any potential changes, which, as I outlined, there really aren't any. But as a concluding statement, we are hoping to hear from individuals and groups in the community if they have any additional information to share about the history of North Beach. So please do send any information you may have to Jonathan, who will then forward it to us. And then for next steps, once we incorporate any comments, a second draft will be submitted to the state office, the Office of Historic Preservation, and the SHPO will then review and elect to send a nomination, forward the nomination to the National Park Service for listing in the National Register. So that concludes my presentation, and unless Jonathan has anything else to add before we open to questions, I'm happy to answer any.
Thank you very much. This is Bart Crandall again. I have one, I think you did a wonderful job. One question is, as a district, it's not just the buildings that are considered, it's location also. And is there any benefit to the city to push the boundary out a touch to take advantage of, at some point in time, if it ever happens, and it may not, applying for a grant to improve the perimeter of some of these streets and things with federal funds, because all the roads within it and around it have to be maintained by the city, and there may be historic funds available to theme it more appropriately than it currently is for the historic district. That's
thank you. So I think some of part of the answer from that probably has to come from Jonathan in terms of what that would mean at the local level for changes to, property that would be now considered an historic district. From my perspective, the question isn't really what would be the effect of you encompassing a larger portion. It would more be how can we justify the larger boundary in terms of the nomination, because the National Register has very strict criteria for how you pick the boundaries and justification for the boundaries. So the current boundary follows the exterior of each parcel that is included, and it does relate to that specific area that Ole Hansen had designed and the properties today that now occupy those. So it creates a triangle just by following those parcel lines. If you extend it further and include the road, the question would be, how do the exterior roadways, what is the reason for including them? What is the historical significance to contributing to the context of why the area is significant?
Yeah, I was looking at those were Ollie Hansen's roads, and they provided access to the site.
Okay.
So they become part of the site. I mean, you could make the argument anyway. I just was trying to see financially for the city, if we were limiting ourselves by having it on the property line, or, but that's something I'd love for somebody to look into.
This is Jonathan. I think one of the things that would be the most relevant in this specific question is like sidewalk materials, and is that something that we look at recapturing? I know that this intersection at Pico and El Camino Real at one point actually was interlocked pavers, not original. Well, I don't know that that was original, but that was replaced, I believe, in the 80s when we moved to asphalt. So there have been different materials in the area. I think the challenge for GPA would be if we expand that to El Camino Real, then we have kind of this segment that is, it's adjacent to the district, but is that segment in and of itself significant in some way, or how does that relate back to the site? And for us, like, the benefit there would be, do we, as a city, do we see that being something that we landscape or pave differently in the long run? I don't know. From my perspective, I don't know that we would treat the street differently. But the sidewalk portion of the right-of-way, potentially that is something that we look at doing as a capital improvement project to almost reinforce the boundary that we're discussing already, that the existing boundary there of the triangle becomes more clear with Ole Hansen tile pavers or something of that nature. I'm not sure on the question of whether or not a project like that would qualify for federal funding. I would have to chat after with GPA and see if there are any comparable examples of right-of-way type improvements within a district that would qualify for funding like that.
Okay, just want to make sure that at least it was considered.
Certainly.
Jonathan, again, this is Commissioner Wu. I guess Bob's idea, I would like to have it, is to perhaps expand the boundary to the center of the right-of-way, or at least to the edge of the sidewalk.
Okay, we'll make note of that.
Thank you, Jonathan. Don, do you have any comments?
Yeah, Jonathan, has the Historical Society provided any comments on this entire effort, by the way?
Yes, this is Jonathan. Yes, they have.
Hello?
They have, and I believe that Stephanie has that comment. And are you going to read that into the record?
I would defer to Chair Crandall, since it's not the public comment period of this item. So whenever you're ready for public comments, let me know.
Oh, okay, fine.
Sure.
For me,
because we may incorporate them in our discussion.
Okay.
For me, I thought this was a very good effort. The entire staff report or the report you wrote was very good. My only question is on page 7 of 13, initial draft. You refer to the non-contributing building, current name is formerly Kehlani Coffee Company, even though it's been bought and gone through design review and just got planning commission approval for Beach Hut Deli. And so why are you still referring to the Kehlani versus the new organization that's purchased the area and is going to try to bring it up to a more Spanish colonial revival standard? Is there some reason why you decided to settle with Kehlani and not the new owner?
This is Audrey. There is no specific reason. I wasn't aware of I missed information about the new owner, but that's something that can absolutely be updated.
Yeah, it wasn't in your report here, because I know Beachhead's owned the property now for about 2 years or so, if not more. They've had a struggle getting through design review and certain permittings here. They finally got it together and just got approved by the Planning Commission for a whole delicatessen effort to go in there with a whole new architectural design, which looks quite nice. So I thought maybe that's the only part of the report I thought needed to be updated. Other than that, I thought the rest of it was very well done. And that's my only comment.
Thank you. That's really great information to have. Actually, when we were there at the site visit, the building was completely boarded, so I think that the name came from Google Street View. So I will note that and make sure that we update that. Thank you.
Commissioner Wu, do you have any additional comments?
Yes. Hey, Audrey, thank you for the courtesy to have us to look at it. On page 38 of the report, there is a gas map photo key, but I don't see this photo. So this report, chapter report, complete?
Yes. So the photographs may not have been included in the staff report. However, I can discuss with Jonathan to see if there's a way we can make them available. But they are just views from our site visit during after the walking tour.
Yeah, but in the complete version, you will have the photograph included, are you?
Correct. So when we submit the nomination to the National Register, they actually have, so the form ends with the diagram of the sketch map. The photographs are just sent in digital files in a separate folder on a CD. So they're not actually inserted into a PDF.
Also, a question for Jonathan. I understand the GPA is an architectural historian, they're specialist on this. Jonathan, did you have a historical society to take a look at this report? I see one-page letter from Larry Culbertson. It seemed to be pretty short and a quick letter. Did they have the resource to do any review about the accuracy of historic stuff?
So the Historic Society received the same packet that the committee members received and essentially on the same timeline. I actually provided the draft report to not just the Historic Society, but also to the North Beach Community Association and to anyone who had participated in our walking tour of North Beach and expressed interest in hearing of advancements in this project. So yes, they did have an opportunity to review, but it was the same timeline as the committee, so they have had access to it for about the past week.
Okay, thank you.
Don, anything else, or shall we?
No, I just would like to hear the Historic Society's comments and some of the other public comments if they're available for the record.
Very good.
This is Commissioner Wu. I do have another comment on the report. Are we in a discussion? Are we in a discussion, or are we still just asking a question to the staff?
You could ask a question of staff if you like.
Oh, no.
It's just a review. We're not
okay.
approving or denying anything here. It's just new business.
Well, starting from page 19 of the report, that's about a narrative statement of significance. My feeling is the writing becomes very, very smooth and refined. With one exception, in the second paragraph underneath the introduction, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth line, so that I can see it's a typo. Gay walks. I think it should be sidewalks of red Spanish tile and the streets curving picturesquely over the land.
So I'm not, can you repeat what page that was on?
It's on page 19 of the report. You go to introduction, first paragraph, then the quote of the first paragraph. You go to line 5. You go to line 5. The first word. It's a gay walks of red Spanish tile. I believe that's sidewalk. Sidewalks, not a gay walk.
Oh, I see that now. Yes.
It's okay. It's just a draft.
That's a direct quote from Ole Hansen. It was taken out of a book written by Walker. I have the book with me. I can double check, but I think that is correct. But I will certainly double check.
I believe it's a sidewalk, so please double check it.
I will, absolutely.
As I said, starting from this page, the history, the writing style is really good. Prior to that, I would recommend that someone to copy edit it. I see a few occasions. I'm not going to be very picky or nitty-gritty on those specifics, but I see some places that the writing can be enhanced by a copy editor.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
My feeling is that recognizing this is a draft version, but the writing, especially if you go from page 5, that's a description portion. These writings, some of that writing can be improved or refined by a copy editor.
Okay, thank you. I will forward that information as well. We will make sure to do another peer review of this before it
Right.
finalized.
And I guess someone in your firm will be a creative writer type of people, and also after second round or third round by yourself, you cannot catch any error or misspelling or typo. So it's having a fresh set of eye to look at it will be helpful.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, very, very good presentation. Excited about pursuing the historic district. I think it benefits the city very well to do this, and including the property owners who are within the district. So thank you very much for your effort, and yours also, Jonathan.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
I'll wrap up real quick with a timeline. I included that as attachment 2 in the report. So the next step will be to
Yes, you did.
incorporate any comments from this round before we submit. I do want to alert you that the State Historic Preservation Office, they have been delayed by COVID, as we all have, and so there is a chance that we won't be getting on to their next quarterly meeting and may have to go to their later fall meeting, which is actually in November, for our specific item. So we're hoping to potentially go sooner, but there's a good likelihood that we would be deferred to that later meeting for the final review from SHPO. That's the state entity that does the review before sending to the National Park Service. So just to give you a broad scope of the end game, that's what that would look like. We are going to come back to Planning Commission, and we'll have available the final draft, as well as the other piece of this project is that we're looking at putting together some simple marketing materials, and what we're looking at doing in that avenue is postcards. That's something that the city has done in the past, so we're kind of bringing that back to life. GPA's role is going to be to provide some design services for us, so they won't actually be printing the cards, they'll provide some conceptual design. So we'll have a chance to look at those as well at Planning Commission, and the goal again is to support our general plan policy of promoting heritage tourism in San Clemente, and we think that that can accomplish that. So that'll be the next thing that we look at with Planning Commission, and that will likely be in August that we bring that before you.
Very good. Hopefully we'll be able to have a public forum by that time.
That would be
This is Commissioner Wu. I'm very excited to see this in progress. Cannot wait to see this happen. Thank you very much for bringing.
Okay,
Jonathan,
let's close the new business. The next item is old business, which we have none. And Stephanie, any oral or written communications?
No additional oral communications were received on items that were not agendized tonight.
Very good. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn. I move that the next adjourned regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee will be held on Wednesday, June 10th, 2020 at 4:00 p.m. in Council Chambers, 100 Avenida Presidio, San Clemente, California, 92672.
second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Brown, motion by Wu. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Very good meeting and very good comments. Thank you very much.